Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to ReBingeIt. This is the Star Trek Prodigy podcast. My name is James.
And my name is Kim, and we are watching and overanalyzing every episode of Star Trek Prodigy, like true Star Trek geeks. Hit it. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 2, Episodes 19 and 20, the finale of Star Trek Prodigy Season 2, and maybe the finale forever, we don't know, of Prodigy, because so far we haven't heard anything about Season 3.
Which we need. We need a Season 3. Write to Netflix, send them emails.
I agree. This is a great show. Paramount Plus was stupid for canceling it, or whatever they did, but we need a Season 3. Yep. But anyway, we're here today to talk about the last two episodes of the season, Ouroboros Parts 1 and 2.
And the podcast. This is the end of the Season 2 of the podcast.
Yeah, I guess it is. I mean, we'll keep going with Voyager. Voyager will return next week.
Oh, yeah.
And be weekly again after this. So it'll simplify our lives a little bit, which is nice. We'll get back to Voyager full time.
Yeah, we won't have that discussion about which episode is going out this week. What are we doing today?
Oh my God, so confusing. I had to finally put it in my calendar because it just made no sense because we're a few weeks ahead on one and we're only 1 week ahead on the other. Oh my God, so confusing. Okay, so I have the notes for part 1. You have the notes for part 2.
Yes,
so are you ready? Oh, and then I should also say at the end,
Yeah.
we will talk a little bit about the season overall. We'll talk about the episodes we thought were the best, and we give our thoughts on the good and the bad of what went on in Season 2.
And I guess speculation is going to be absolutely wild speculation this week about what would happen in Season 3.
If there was a Season 3. Yeah. Although, I don't know, we kind of wrap up a lot of stuff, so not a lot left to the imagination here.
Yes, it will be, I don't know, fantasy of what we would like to see in Season 3. Well, certainly for me.
What it could be,
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then let's get going on Ouroboros Part 1.
Okay.
We open on Asencia, shocked that she's lost contact with the city. They show explosions and fires burning in the distance, and Dreadnought says the city is in chaos. The uprising is growing, and they're demanding peace with Starfleet. This, of course, enrages Asencia.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, basically her whole purpose in life is to destroy Starfleet. And she says, open all rifts and launch the invasion now, striking all key Federation targets. One of her advisors tries arguing with her that we're not ready, but that is a pointless endeavor.
Oh, yeah.
She fires up her big weapon, and in a very cool effect, we see several rifts opening up in the sky, and a bunch of her creepy ships lift up off the ground.
Just look at that animation. I mean, the lightning effects and the openings of the wormhole rifts, we're starting off solid. And those ships, they are such a nod to the Narada from Star Trek 2009, the Kelvin universe.
You're talking about Nemo's ship?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
I have to comment as well. Have you noticed that Asencia has reached the peasants have let me down, they don't deserve to live phase of a tyrant?
Yeah, she's moved into her everything will bend to my will mode.
Yeah, and they will all die if they're not with me.
Right. Yeah, she's like, only I know what's best for Solum.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is one of the phases that tyrants go through. Usually the last one before they die in a bunker.
Oh my. Back on Voyager, we see the space-time rifts opening, and Chakotay notes that they lead to every major Federation starbase across 3 quadrants.
Yep.
No idea how he knows that, but it saves us a lot of time. We don't have to go and figure it out.
He's seen the future. He knows one of the possible outcomes of the timeline.
Wesley is excited because this is what he'd hoped for, a chance to send the Protostar back in time. Rock agrees they can merge the energy from the rifts to create the temporal wormhole they need. Zero and Majel question how this can be done, saying the science involved is like finding a needle in the haystack.
Yeah.
But Wesley says they have to do it or the loom will erase us all from existence.
In this scene, it's great the way everybody is somber and Wesley is so upbeat. And he's like, yes, this is great. This is what we wanted.
Yes. I know. I love the Doctor Who-ness of Wesley.
Yes.
Janeway sends Chakotay to the Protostar to prep it for its return journey to Tars Lamora.
Yep.
Rock says that she, Magellan Zero, will help Wesley find the necessary space-time coordinates, and the rest of the crew will go to the surface, because for some reason, we have to enter the coordinates manually at the very top of Asencia's research spire.
Yep.
And Jankum says, well, that's just inconvenient. And it really is.
No, Jankum, I believe that's what's known as a plot device.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, I'm not sure why we have to do this, but we don't have time to dig into the why.
Yeah.
We make a point of seeing Dow grab a gold comm badge from his quarters, which we'll see used later.
Yep.
Janeway says no one else is coming to save us, so Voyager must hold the line alone. I mean, there really is no line.
Well, it's a theoretical one.
Yeah, I mean, they need to stop all of those futuristic ships from going into the rifts and attacking the Federation star bases. I guess that's what she means.
Oh, it was a great piece of Star Trek captaining, where she stands there and says, Voyager is our last and only defense, and we will hold the line.
Oh, she's got a lot of tough Janeway lines in this episode.
Even though the episode is terrible, it makes me think of Sisko's line from the Siege of AR-558, where he says, we hold.
Yes, very dramatic. If you want to listen to how much James disliked that episode, please go and listen to that in our ReBinge Deep Space Nine podcast, which is in your ReBingeIt feed.
Yep.
You just have to scroll back a bit. On the Protostar, Holo Janeway seems a little testy as she calls out Chakotay's old Maquis tricks. Rock beams Dal, Murph, Gwen, Jankum, and Ilthurin down to the planet, and they head to the spire on foot.
Don't you think Holo Janeway should have said to him, well, how'd that Maquis crap work out for the rest of the Maquis with the Dominion?
Yeah. But remember she had that weird line in the episode where they were rescuing Chakotay that Adric, died so he could live or something? I don't know. I feel like he has somehow reprogrammed her to be sympathetic to him in an awkward fashion, because it's weird.
Yeah. Behind the scenes, he removed all the area of her code, which was Chakotay is annoying.
The logic area, perhaps. Or maybe just all the time, because she spent 10 years just with him alone. Maybe all that time really did impact who she became as a character.
Interesting.
Because there's another point later that you're like, what is going on with this hologram? So Wesley and the others start trying to solve the time problem as Voyager starts buzzing around the giant futuristic ships, shooting quantum torpedoes and avoiding the power-sucking beams. Down on the planet, the crew starts climbing the giant spire as Ilthurin tries to hold off the attacking dreadnoughts. Back on the Protostar, Holo Janeway continues to be cranky, and Chakotay says, what's with you? You've been on me all day. I did think here maybe she finally realized he got everyone killed under his command.
Yes, yeah.
Well, we learn that she's upset that if the ship goes back in the past, she will have to lose her memories of everything that's happened to her since getting back from the future.
Yep.
He assures her that they'll make a copy of her somehow. I did think this scene was very weird because it seems funny to say that a hologram isn't acting naturally, but is the reason she's like this, is it because she spent 10 years alive trapped with him?
Yeah.
Rather than developing in a normal way? Or did Chakotay reprogram her for that time period? Who knows? They don't say that.
Right.
But she has such a different attitude from the other version of her from season 1, because it was the same hologram.
Yeah.
It just evolved in a different way. But I thought this was really weird.
I also think it demonstrates Chakotay's management and captaining style. He didn't think of a way of backing up the Holo Janeway before it became an emergency.
No, he didn't. That's not his strength.
No.
Now Rock, Zero, and Wesley start walking through the timeline to catch the audience up on what's been happening.
Oh, yeah.
They describe what has led us here to the paradox we're in, and Rock eventually has a breakthrough saying, maybe Chakotay was never the one that sent the Protostar back. What if all along it was them, as in what they're doing now?
Yeah.
She says maybe the reason all the other wormholes exist is because of their actions and not the other way around.
Right.
It's quite convenient. Wesley agrees, and they're all excited, and I'm not sure I have any idea what they're talking about.
Wesley does bring up that line we've heard before, which is the small changes to the timeline don't matter, but you have to make the big changes.
Right. They cross-reference all the wormholes, finding a common thread, which Rock says they can fly through, causing all the other openings to be stitched back together somehow.
Yep.
Sure.
I think at this point, maybe they should bring in the Department of Temporal Investigations. I feel they really need to get involved in this. I feel this might be one of those things of where you're just throwing more chaos onto the fire.
Yeah, I guess you have to believe that the Traveler knows what he's doing, even though he's a little damaged.
Yeah. Okay.
But still, This is really his whole thing. His whole existence is about this.
It is supposed to be his area of expertise.
Yeah.
And I do like Janeway actually fighting a space battle with the giant ships that are just poised, waiting to go through the wormholes.
Right.
Oh, and another thing we get here, it's specifically called out. Chakotay appeared 52 years in Solem's future.
Okay. So they let the others down on the planet know that they're going to send them the coordinates, just as that group reaches the platform.
Yeah, there was a lot of climbing there.
Yeah. But Asencia, of course, is there, and she starts shooting, destroying their ability to enter the coordinates into a console. So now they have to climb to the top of the thin transceivers to manually enter the coordinates.
It just keeps getting better, doesn't it?
Yeah. Gwen says she'll stay and deal with Asencia. At first, Dal disagrees, but then he follows Gwen's lead. That's been kind of a theme the whole season.
Yeah.
Where he's like, oh, wait. And then, okay, I'll do what you say.
Yeah. Very notably last week when she was in command of the mission and Dal went along with her 2 separate rescue plans.
Right. Asencia sends Dreadnought after the others and starts a battle of words with Gwen, of course, because that's how she always starts. Yeah. But it's followed by some hand-to-hand combat.
Oh, we have to bring up her line here when she turns the heirloom into almost like a batlath and says, "How many times must I beat you down for you to know your place?"
Oh my gosh. Terrible.
She's so wonderfully villainous.
Up a couple of levels, Jankum starts making the necessary inputs, and Zero says, "You've got 90 seconds." He's almost got it when a cable comes loose above and starts flapping around.
Oh, yeah.
Dreadnought arrives at the same time to attack, and Murph has to distract him long enough for Dal to start climbing again. And Jankum in this scene has some excellent lines here as the drama builds.
Oh, yeah. Jankum delivers the great line of when he's about to power it up, he says, "Here comes the light show."
There's also a part where he tells Dal to be careful, or otherwise he's going to have his body parts blown across 100 years or something. And Dal is like, "I'm going to choose to ignore that." And Jankum says, "Why? It's true." That part made me laugh out loud.
It's like sometimes you don't want the engineer telling you the exact details while you're in the middle of a mission.
No.
What's the line from Han Solo? "Never tell me the odds."
So Dal climbs through very perilous conditions as Dreadnought appears to have the upper hand with Murph.
Yep.
And takes aim at Dal, but Murph covers the robot's eyes and pulls him off the ledge and into what appears to be a fiery grave for both of them.
Oh.
As Jankum looks on horrified, Murph emerges unharmed with Dreadnought's severed head in his hand.
Okay. I thought Murph was toast at that point.
I did too, yeah, because we were talking about...
I thought that was going to be the sacrifice.
Yeah, we were talking about somebody's have to sacrifice themselves, yep. Asencia continues trying to kill Gwen, asking why she just won't die. They keep falling down from ledge to ledge, injuring themselves.
Yeah, every time they fall, I just go, ouch. That's gotta hurt.
Yeah, ow, man. But Gwen says she won't give up. Asencia says, "The multiverse holds a bitter truth. Her home and her solum was destroyed, and it always will be."
I think this is really smart from Gwen. She's clearly recognized that Asencia seems more interested in proving her superiority over Gwen. I'm going to speculate that maybe that's because she was a lower rank than the diviner in the original timeline. So sort of defeating, humiliating his daughter is worth something to her personally, proving her superiority over Gwen. What's great about that is, Gwen recognizing this and distracting her. So rather than Asencia completing her war plans, which should be her absolute priority, it should be her number one thing, she gets distracted into this useless battle. It's like,
right.
After you've won, then you can deal with Gwen and the rest of them. It's kind of funny because it's almost the classic trope of the villains in Star Trek not concentrating on what's important for the big picture to achieve victory.
Well, and you've compared her to Khan a few times, and of course that's Khan's flaw at the end.
Right.
He's not willing to give up on his vengeance plan against Kirk.
Yeah.
And if he did, he could have survived. But no.
As his number one, Joaquin said, "We have a ship, you have defeated Kirk." And
right.
What does he do? He gets stuck on a revenge kick. And this is another great example of that.
Yeah, he gets stuck in his own version of the hand-to-hand combat.
Right.
Yeah.
The final thing I'm going to say here is, I feel Asencia is displaying what the diviner said earlier on in season 1.
Confident in our supremacy.
Exactly.
Well, she's about to kill Gwen just as Dal makes it to the loose cable, getting zapped a couple times along the way.
Ouch.
He connects the cable just in time, getting shocked and falling dramatically from the platform. But Murph grabs him and pulls him to safety.
Yep.
This was I thought, an excellent movie quality scene, the way they did that. And they kind of went into slow motion when he fell off the platform.
Oh, yeah.
It was really good.
Oh, absolutely.
Suddenly, all the futuristic ships start exploding and the rift energy converges into one wormhole.
Oh, yeah. That was great, the way the wormholes close and cut the ships in half.
Yeah, it was good. Iltherin, the young Asencia, and many other Vaunakats appear to see Asencia about to skewer Gwen.
Oh, and Asencia is in the full glowing effect. Her head is doing that Vaunakat glowing thing.
And they all extend their will to Gwen with their glowing heads, and all the Who's in Whoville join hands to give Gwen the power to fight off Asencia and reclaim her heirloom.
Oh, and Asencia is delivering the best lines when she's standing there with the heirloom to Gwen's throat, and she says, "I will conquer this reality until I have the soul I want that bends to my will."
I know, she's totally lost it.
Oh.
But I really did have this sense of the Who's in Whoville in this moment when they all sort of join hands.
Yeah.
And, that was what made the Grinch's heart grow. And in this case, it makes Gwen glow. And she somehow gets all of their power.
Yeah.
And she manages to sort of turn the whole thing around. But at this moment, Asencia kind of shorts out and she loses all of her glowing power.
Yep. I really like this scene because the second person to start the transfer, giving their powers to Gwen, is the young Asencia.
Yeah, that must have hurt.
Oh, yeah, that's even worse.
She must have been thinking, if I could have, I'd have killed you at the beginning.
Gwen, does she actually take control of the heirloom? Because she doesn't even actually have to touch it. It just sort of pushes away.
Well, the heirloom ends up sort of automatically coming back to her, right? And she regains control of it. And that's how it worked before when she had power over it. She could manipulate it even when it wasn't attached to her.
So I guess we see pretty clearly here that the Vaunakat have some kind of telepathic ability and them all transferring it to Gwen.
Yeah, I think this is the first time we've seen where they can all transfer their own strength to someone if they all join together. And that seemed to give Gwen a lot more power than she had before.
Yeah, it's good to see that Gwen has finally become a Jedi Master.
Yeah.
And I do like Asencia, burning herself out.
Yeah, that was crazy. She did. It just looked like the light bulb went out.
Right.
Janeway up on Voyager says, let's get the Protostar back where it belongs. But just then, they get a subspace signal from the wormhole, and I have very bad news. Because we hear the chittering sound of the loom.
Yeah.
And Wesley says, no, it's too early for this. And this is how the episode ends. This is another good example of the use of that sound, and they used it multiple times where they really established what it was, and then all we had to do was hear that noise, and we were like, we know what that is.
It's all about to go very badly.
That's right.
I do think here they should have cut back to the planet with Gwyn holding the heirloom and the glowing eyes and turning to the crowd and saying, "You will now all bow before me."
Yeah. Now I'm going to build the Solum that bends to my will.
Yeah. I mean, she's got to at least be a little tempted by that. I mean, even Data at least considered the Borg Queen's offer, so...
Oh, no. It's not the ring of power. It's just a temporary flush.
Oh. I loved the whole battle with Asencia. I thought that was great in terms of a plot point of the distraction. Because while it's going on, there's multiple times where they show you from Gwen's perspective. She's watching what's going on the high tower. I think it shows Gwen's smarts in the strategic sense.
Right, because she's staying on mission.
Yes.
She knows that she only has to survive long enough for that to happen, or at least keep the battle going, keep her distracted long enough for that to happen.
I also think that's truly a Star Trek thing of she's putting herself on the line. Her survival doesn't matter. The mission matters, the greater good.
And there's a moment, too, from the other side where Dal looks down with his binoculars just to make sure that Gwen is okay.
Yeah.
And that is a cute little moment between the two of them.
Agreed.
All right, that's the end of episode 19. So on to episode 20.
Ouroboros Part 2. We open with Vaunakat soldiers taking the damaged Asencia away. So it's interesting to see how quickly they change loyalties. And Asencia seems to sense the loom coming, lamenting, "What have I done? Well, it's a bit late for regrets now."
Girl, yeah. It's a little late to be worried about that.
Yeah.
I wonder if, what prompted her to say that? Was it the fact that she had lost all of her power, or was it just that, maybe she heard the chittering and she realized, oh, they're going to kill us all. Yeah. This is the end.
You'd think from her perspective, she'd already, at the beginning, reached the peasants have failed me, they all deserve to die. Why would she regret it?
Well, all but her.
Well, that's true. Maybe it's now coming down to her, and she's like, yeah.
And also what's happening now, if she knows, and maybe she learned it from being hooked up to Wesley.
Yeah.
But the loom isn't going to create a new reality or start this reality over.
It's just going to devour it.
It's just going to wipe it, soul him out from all of reality.
Yeah. On board Voyager, we see hundreds of loom flowing through the wormhole. Wesley tells them they have to send the Protostar through, or the loom will just destroy everything. So a quick rundown of the plan is the Protostar and Voyager fly through together, and Voyager clears a path. Janeway says, no one faces this alone. Set weapons to maximum.
Yeah, I like when tough Janeway appears here.
Yes. The loom are attacking Solum, weapons are useless, and we get another shot of even more loom flowing out of the wormhole, as if it couldn't get any worse.
Yeah, that's bad.
Back into a space shot of the ships flying through the wormhole, as Zero reports they sense an insatiable hunger from the loom. And in a dramatic build, Gwyn counts down the entering of the wormhole, and Janeway announces, once more into the breach.
Oh, I got goosebumps when she said that.
I will just add to this, Core lives. Probably one of the best Klingon episodes.
We've 100% talked about that on here.
In the wormhole, Janeway orders auxiliary power to the phasers. Whatever you do, keep firing. This is 1000% combat Janeway. This is a warrior worthy of Tovacor.
If only she were wearing a tank top.
They're really pulling out the stops here. Both the animation and the music to build tension, it's working so well. On the Protostar, Dal tells Wesley he was right. This is why they all needed to be together. To get to this moment, this is the future he saw. Wesley replies, oh, I wasn't talking about now. The reason the universe needs you all together hasn't happened yet. And wonderfully cryptically finishes with, things yet to come, wondrous and terrible things. But you'll have to wait.
Yeah, he's like, anyway, see you later.
Do we find these out in season 4 or season 5?
Oh, I don't know.
Am I being hopeful here?
That was really funny. I kind of felt like Wesley had been a bit melodramatic in this episode until that moment. And then I went, oh, there it is. There's the Doctor Who version of him, that we've been enjoying.
Yeah. Backing into Voyager and navigation is out. And Janeway transfers nav to Cetacean Ops, which appears to be a non-evil humpback whale. And also, it makes the canon of the voyage home even more important.
Oh.
Because without the whales, the universe is lost. Maybe that's why the aliens went back in the first place.
Oh, gosh, maybe.
Yeah. That whole probe was just to find out what the whales were up to because they needed to save the universe in the future. The whale succeeds, and I can't remember what its name was, and they fly clear of the loom into empty space in the wormhole. I really liked the effect they did here, where the whale was like mimicked swimming movements of Voyager through space, and it was like following a path.
Yeah, the name of the whale is Jillian, and this is a really cool effect.
I'm going to comment that I think it's an interesting concept here, because the whales naturally move through a 3D environment. Their world is 3D.
True.
Which I could see easily translating to space travel, whereas humans have to learn how to fly. And even then, you're restricted in flying of the actual limitations of your flying machine. So I would think, for control of the ship, a whale would be an absolutely awesome pilot. They naturally think in 3D.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm also going to add this. I think because I've been watching some of Strange New Worlds, because you know how much I love Ortegas as the pilot. Thinking about control of the ships, I would envision you actually using less of a control console for flying it, and more of like a VR headset and gloves to give you more of an immersive experience of how to fly the ship. It just seems like it would be a bit difficult on a console just pressing buttons to go left and right.
Yeah.
When you don't have a full sensory environment of what's to your left, what's your right, what's behind you.
Right. Okay.
Now, in the open space within the wormhole, the crew marvels at the beauty of the spectacle, and we see temporal echoes of the Protostar appearing like ghosts in the wormhole.
I love that. We saw that in season 1 in A Voyager.
Yeah.
The episode Parallax.
Oh.
Remember? B'Elanna and Janeway are trying to save the other Voyager.
Yeah.
And they can't figure out which one is the real one. One's going one direction, one's going the other. And it's because of the temporal echo.
Right. Wesley tells them this is what happens when the timeline is reintegrating.
And sure, Wesley.
What was, will be. Chakotay sets the Protostar's autopilot for the exit, and Hollow Janeway laments. When the kids find the ship, she can't have any memories of them, or the weapon, or Chakotay. The last one not being really much of a loss.
And also, she still has to have that evil programming.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that all has to be restored.
For the whole timeline to be right. Yep.
But Chakotay calls the doctor, who tells them he just finished copying her program to the EMH backup module. So, what is the ethical take on copying a sentient hologram's program without their consent?
Without their permission.
Yeah.
Well, Chakotay did tell her they would find a way to copy her.
Ah, okay.
So,
if you look at what the doctor is holding when he's talking about the backup, it's really cool to see that mini discs are still available in the 2380s. I guess Sony is never going to give up on that format.
That was funny.
Another question. Do you think Holo Janeway is sentient by this point? I thought she became sentient with her interactions with the crew, with the first season.
I don't know. I mean, remember, she was with Chakotay for 10 years.
Yeah.
So she's had a long period of time.
But a very limited interaction, and she was stuck on that sandbar.
Yeah. Did we determine that the doctor was sentient?
I think so.
Then probably.
Yeah.
But you're right. You wouldn't think it would happen too quickly, right? It would take quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
I think so, yes.
Okay. I have an observation here. Something I think they should have done. Rather than back her up at this point in time, I think they need to leave the backup device, seeing as he just put her onto a single mini disc. I assume that's like mini disc tetraquad format or something. Anyway, they should leave the recording device somewhere on the Protostar with instructions, in the event of emergency, upload the program.
Plug this in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the learning and experience that Holo Janeway got from season 1, that's still going to be lost when the ship is destroyed. So I think they should have put the backup unit on board with a sticky note saying, if you need to back up Janeway, use this.
Here, use this. Yeah.
As they keep on saying, small changes don't matter. This would be an awesome small change. You now have a backup module for the hologram.
Yeah, because that was the best version of Holo Janeway at the end of season 1.
With all that real world experience. And that's lost. Yeah. And you know how I feel about losing history.
And it's going to happen again, the same exact thing.
Right.
Well, though, I mean, I don't want to jump to the end, but all the time shenanigans, it shouldn't happen again because then the paradoxes and the loom and the blah, blah, blah.
We'll bring that up in a bit. Well, Janeway orders the computer to reset the holo program, and she disappears. As they prepare to beam away, Rock says, she's just like how we found her. And Dal takes the original Starfleet badge and places it on the floor, right where Rock first touched it.
I don't think it was on the floor.
It looked like it was on the floor. Was it on a console?
I think it was on the console at the front. I think it's on the main console.
Yeah.
Anyway.
After they beam away, the two ships separate, and we go into a great montage of the discovery of the Protostar through the events of season 1 and season 2, culminating in Holo Janeway right before she destroys the Protostar at the end of season 1, saying, "Go fast."
Oh, they're trying to pull at our heartstrings, those jerks.
Absolutely.
I did wonder how when Dal puts his comm badge down and then they beam away, so many times what we've seen is when somebody takes their comm badge off, they beam the comm badge and not the person. So how did they get that? How'd they get that right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Dal's stuck on there.
I mean, you gotta pay attention to those little details because Star Trek geeks do.
Yeah.
We pay attention to that garbage, A
very good catch there, Kim.
Thank you.
Voyager flies through the wormhole and we cut to Tars Lamora with the Protostar sitting amongst the crystals. And we replay Dal and Rock exploring the empty ship, and we finish with Rock touching the Starfleet badge into whiteout.
Yeah, that was good.
And the rest, as they say, is history. Or season 1, if we want to be precise.
or just last season.
Yeah. Voyager flies out of the wormhole as it closes behind them. The loom on the Solum begin flying into the air and disappearing. Tysus reports all temporal incursions are gone, and Wesley whispers to the young crew, "You did it. The time loop is closed." Gwyn's armband powers down and she removes it. Dal comments, "It looks like you're here for good." Janeway is recording a log, and we see her shaking hands with Ilterum on Solum. And I assume this is a more formal first contact as a representative of his people?
I guess so.
Ilterum also hugs Gwyn, which was very cute. She wasn't expecting that. I think that shows that this is a very different diviner.
Unfortunately for the timeline.
Yes.
But anyway.
Well, I'm going to assume here that the alternative timeline, the timeline that maybe Solum should have had, was that over the next few years before First Contact, it becomes some kind of fascist state that leads to that line, confident in their supremacy. Was this the track they were supposed to take, which led to the Civil War? That seems to be the mindset that Asencia came from, and the Diviner. And this Solum is now going to be radically different. So you remember in season 2 of Picard, there was an alternative Earth, where Earth was the center of a colonial empire, a galactic colonial empire, rather than the Federation and Starfleet.
Right. So you're thinking all the things that happened to the Protostar are in a different universe?
I'm thinking what's happened now is they've changed Solum from becoming this confident in our supremacy to this potential member of the Federation.
I think it depends how you look at it, because we're looking at it and we're thinking, well, she kind of fixed Iltheron, or all these interactions that he's had with Starfleet, who've helped to save his daughter, helped to save his planet. That's obviously going to change the way he looks at Starfleet. But one of the lines that Asencia had was, she said, in all of the multiverse, right, her Solum is always destroyed by civil war. So I wonder if, even though we sort of averted this crisis temporarily, they're still destined for something to go wrong.
Ooh.
Maybe it doesn't, it's not for the same reasons, but something still is going to happen that leads to that version of the Diviner in the future and that version of the Vindicator. The trouble is, this timeline, the Ouroboros, right, of the snake eating itself, is that they have to hate Starfleet in order for this whole circle to come back around.
Right.
But setting that part of it aside, if she's right, if there's no way to avoid Solum tearing itself apart, no matter what we do, then it's still going to happen.
Interesting. So it's an unavoidable cycle.
Maybe. I think that's what they were trying to tell us, honestly. I think that's what they were trying to tell us, because you and I, when we first watched this together, we were like, wait, this doesn't make sense. Yeah. We have completely changed Solum. These people are different. It's not going to end up the same way. And even that version of Asencia saw herself in the future and went, I'm not turning into that, right?
But maybe that's the eventuality that they can't get around.
Maybe. That's the fate they can't stop. Yeah. And it might be because of that attitude that is embedded in them that they are superior.
Ooh.
It's still going to come out.
Wow. That is certainly a disturbing possibility for Solum.
Yeah, I mean, we could easily start fighting about Starfleet after this, especially if you think about what Starfleet does here. You haven't mentioned it yet, but Starfleet has taken all that future technology away. They're boxing it up. They put into Daystrom Institute boxes, and they're taking it away. There could be people there who resent that.
That's very true. They're stealing our future.
Right.
We go into another montage showing things like the disassembly of Asencia's portal tech and it being shipped to Daystrom, as you said. Rock is working with Wesley, Jankum is debriefing Gnome and Tysus, with lots of acting of the events, which they seem to find amusing. So he's bonding with those two. And perhaps, most importantly, Wesley finally calls his mum. And even better, actually visits her.
Yeah, that was cute.
He explains, the universe always needs me, and he doesn't know how long he can stay in this reality. But before he disappears, Beverly introduces him to his brother, and Wesley says, you know he's like part Borg, right?
Spoilers, Picard Season 3.
We also see that the Doctor is finishing his latest holo novel called The Mentor.
Oh, man.
Did you pause the screen to read the first page?
No, I did not.
It is hilariously bad.
Oh, no. Is it like one of my mom's books?
Oh, it is worse. I was laughing because it is really kind of cheesy.
Mm.
And if you notice, he credits it as a novel by EMH. So he still hasn't decided on a name.
Oh, interesting. I mean, we're in season 2 at the point where that person with the phage, the Vidian, gives him a name.
Right.
So I guess he doesn't keep that one. I don't remember, yeah.
Janeway closes her voiceover, saying, there's always new chapters ahead, even when you think your story is finished. And we cut to Tysus reporting, Captain on the bridge, and we see it's Chakotay. Immediately all the bridge crew resign their commissions rather than serve under Captain Crew Killer.
Controversial opinion. We should have ended at the Janeway log. Should have just ended.
Do you think if you're in Starfleet and you get assigned under Chakotay, your first reaction would be to resign because this guy gets crews killed?
I don't see why he'd have a very good reputation.
Continuing the voiceover, Janeway reports she submitted her papers for an early retirement, saying, Don't we all deserve a new beginning? No, no, and no.
Hell no.
Yeah. Although, I guess Kirk retired at least once, because if you remember in Generations, he talks about when he met Antonia, and he actually went back to Starfleet after that. I always felt bad for Antonia because Kirk, like Picard, his only true love was space.
It's been a while now since I've seen the end of Voyager, and we're only in season 2 in our ReBinge, so I can't remember what I felt about Janeway at the end or how I thought she, or at least, what state she was in, sort of. But this seems weird to me that she would just retire at this point. I don't know.
I think the captains can make mistakes. Kirk retired and then went back to Starfleet. I think it works for Janeway as well.
Part of it is probably because I'll never understand why someone thinks it's a good idea to go and start working the land. That is so much harder than whatever you've been doing.
It's much easier if you have robots.
Oy, but she doesn't have any robots. She was digging in the dirt.
That wasn't full farming. That was just like gardening.
The garden?
Yeah. But I don't think retirement would suit her.
Yeah, I mean, people can do what they want, but it doesn't feel right.
Agreed.
I mean, I said it a couple of episodes ago where I don't feel like they served Janeway very well throughout this entire season because she's been like a side character, and she's not a side character. She's a star. Yeah. And I think this is another example of it. Yeah,
I don't have so much of a problem with it, like I said, because we know from Kirk's history, he retired and regretted it. And Sisko was about to retire and didn't.
He was thinking about it. He tells Picard that,
Yeah.
Well, not retiring, but changing jobs.
Yeah, he was actually putting in his resignation, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Back at Starfleet HQ, Dr. Erin is giving a lecture telling the students to throw away their Temporal Mechanics 101 pads, to much cheering. And then announces they're moving to Temporal Mechanics 201, to much groaning.
Oh, I like seeing Dr. Erin McDonald again.
Yes. And outside on Starfleet campus, the young crew are all sitting together as Majel and Zero touch fingertips, which I think is a kind of Vulcan telepathy thing. We've seen that happen before.
Cute.
Rock comments, are we kind of a thing around here? As other students seem to be waving at them and looking at them. They seem quite popular.
Yeah, they're all going, those are the guys that screwed up the timeline, almost got us all killed.
Jankum says, in perfect Jankum style, Jankum's practically royalty. Again, yeah. Gotta love him.
Oh, so good.
Dal, perhaps a little older and definitely wiser, tells Gwyn he used to dream of going fast, but now he likes to take one step at a time, which I think is a wonderful demonstration of Dal maturing, starting to look before he leaps. It's time to balance the Kirk daring with some Janeway pragmatism. Dal tells her he wants to stay on the command track, he thinks, but there are lots of things he wants to explore. As they chat, everyone around them suddenly seems to get notifications on their datapads, and the view screens start to show the breaking news of the synth ships attacking Mars. Majel comments, this is the Utopia Planitia shipyards, where the new fleet is being built. Over 20,000 vessels, gone. And my thought was, the Dominion here has got to be going, damn, if we just waited a little longer, Starfleet would have destroyed itself and we could have walked in.
Yeah.
And I guess this is also a tie to the novels leading up to the events of Picard Season 1.
Yep.
A very worried Rock asks, what's happening? What does this mean? Abrupt cut to Janeway working on her farm, doing a bit of gardening, with a shuttle landing and Chakotay informing her all reserve officers are being called back. The Federation needs her. I guess this isn't as bad as when they were called Bones in the motion picture, because he was like in the middle of a disco night out.
Yeah.
They recalled him like in his full 70s themed disco regalia.
Oh my God.
Totally worth seeing that scene just because of how hilarious he's dressed. At a Starfleet briefing, Admiral Jellicoe is explaining the fleet has been lost with immeasurable lives. Starfleet is short thousands of able hands across the Federation, and it's scaling back operations, ceasing all exploration and focusing on protecting their own citizens. Picard's folly has come back to bite them in the butt.
Wait, why do you say that? Is that because...
Picard was the one who pushed them to build the fleet for the Romulan evacuation.
I just don't remember what that was all about. So all the ships that they were building were to save the Romulans?
Correct.
But the Romulans are the ones who blew up the ships?
Correct.
So Picard made them build the ships?
Yes, Picard basically pressured the Federation Council and got them all to agree to build this giant fleet to evacuate Romulus.
Okay.
And Then
And so because they were all focused on doing that, then when the attack happened,
diverted huge amounts of resources, everything into building this giant Picard's Folly fleet to save the Romulans, who the Romulans then blew up using the synths. Janeway objects, but Jellicoe counters. Starfleet is stretched too thin, saying that they don't even have enough comm badges to upgrade half the fleet, saying, "You have your orders." Janeway isn't giving up, countering, "What about Starfleet's mission of peace across the galaxy? What remains if the Federation stops seeking new worlds and refuses those in need?" Jellicoe, as the traditionally morally compromised Starfleet admiral, replies, "That future will have to wait."
It's kind of a bummer we had to end here.
Yeah.
At this part in the story.
I have some comments about that later.
Yeah.
The young crew is together again, and Dal comments that all classes have been suspended until further notice, with Jankum lamenting, "With new orders from Starfleet, who knows what will even be left?" Rock just says, "It's so unfair," and Magell observes, "and illogical." As they're all sitting looking quite depressed by this turn of events, Janeway calls, ordering them to report to the shipyards. And at the shipyards, we see the new Protostar class of ship, deemed impractical for anything but exploration. Starfleet wanted to decommission it, but no fear, Janeway has called in some favors. The ship will fly in a new pilot program under her command, but she needs a few good recruits, and Chakotay presents them with pips. They're now Starfleet ensigns, assigned field commissions. The EMH doctor comments, "You don't have to steal this ship." Dal was thinking that.
Where is Murph going to put his pip?
Oh, he can just swallow it. It'll just, you can swallow it and it'll just float around.
Just float around.
Yeah.
Did you see the name of the ship?
I did not.
Because it is not named the USS Protostar.
What is the ship named?
The USS Prodigy.
Oh, I can't believe I didn't notice the name of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was just too taken in by watching the ship and just going, ooh.
I think we all assumed it would be called the Protostar, but it was a Protostar class.
Yeah.
But the ship name was Prodigy, which was cute.
Janeway tells the young crew they earned it, and we begin a classic Trek speech. She tells them, "In a time the Federation borders are receding, it's of utmost importance that you're a beacon of light, to seek out allies and aid those left behind. Somehow, somewhere, you're going to make a great difference." At least Janeway here is getting the great speeches.
She gets a few good speeches. I mean, she's even in her log earlier. Yeah. That's pretty good. And
it's up there with Picard, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, always. Those two are equal to me. Janeway has a lot of motivating speeches in this season. It's part of the job of the captain.
Well, yes. On board the ship, Janeway tells them they still have a lot to learn and they'll need an instructor. And I think we all know what's coming next. Hollow Janeway materializes, now in a blue uniform. She tells them the Protostar has been upgraded, and she's the emergency command hologram. So she's been promoted too.
Wasn't that the same uniform that she's wearing when she first appears?
She was wearing a red uniform in the last time we saw her here. The Doctor, of course, has to get in a little bit of self-promotion, saying, "Sentient emergency command hologram, a term he created." You just gotta love him. He loves to be the focus of attention.
Yeah.
We also see that there are two command seats, one for the acting captain and the other for the number one. Dal gives a short speech saying that a first officer should be loyal, capable, and keep their captain honest, and stands by the number one chair, telling Gwyn, "I'll be right here as your number one." He continues saying, "I made a mistake. The chair never belonged to me. Others came before me. Others will follow. It's now your time to lead." Janeway says to Gwyn, "Everyone deserves a chance to prove where they belong, Captain." And Gwyn takes the chair. Now in space, with very spiffy new uniforms, love the look, those things look fantastic. Rock reports, awaiting orders, and Dal reports, proto-warp at the ready. Gwyn says, "Let's reach the stars." And we close on the Protostar turning, powering up, and jumping to warp. The end of Season 2.
It does seem a little strange that we couldn't find use for this ship in the current state of things with Starfleet, because even though it's maybe not armed with a lot of weapons, it's very fast.
Yeah.
And in the same way that Discovery gets used frequently because it can get somewhere quicker, not necessarily because it's the toughest.
Yeah.
The same thing could be done with the Protostar. So I think we crammed together some reasons to make this happen.
Well, maybe it was due to Starfleet just looking at anything that took resources away from simply border defense ships.
Yeah, maybe.
That's their problem. They're not thinking holistically.
Yeah, it could be.
Should we go into this now? It's not a criticism of Prodigy, but it's something that I think Starfleet is supposed to be about a brighter future, about enduring against the odds, embracing the optimism. This whole story of Starfleet pulling back on its core principles and the Federation pulling back on its core principles, it's like crappy space opera hack writing. If I want bleak, I'll go and read Warhammer 40k, thank you. This isn't Star Trek. Let's look at it. They've survived 2 Klingon wars, war with the Cardassians, war with the Zenkethi, which Sisko was involved with, if you remember, a huge war with the Dominion, and they have endured and survived. This is the destruction of the shipyards and a fleet that was being built, and it effectively destroys the Federation and Starfleet? Wow, how did the Dominion lose? I feel it's a really poor take on what Star Trek should be.
Well,
/ rant.
Yeah, we weren't fans of Picard season 1 or season 2, really. And season 1 in particular seemed to veer away from what Starfleet was, and even from what our characters were. And I mean, you're a lot harsher on it than I would probably be, but I do tend to agree. And, you know, back when they announced Picard at Comic-Con or whichever event that was at, I was just like, oh my God, you're going to ruin Star Trek. You don't need to bring back Picard. Okay, let's do new stuff and let's go forward. And I do feel like what happened because they were bringing them back is they had to like do something different. And they brought in this like novel writer, not a Star Trek person. And, you know, I was worried about that. And I was also really worried because that was also around the same time of Logan. And Patrick Stewart really liked Logan, thought that was great. I freaking hated Logan. The point is, we really felt like Picard season 1 veered away from what Star Trek is, the Star Trek that we knew at the same time.
Now you're telling a different story. Go and write a different story. Don't take something that's existing and write a bad story about it.
Or make it a different universe or something. You have to do something to make it different.
Yeah.
But anyway, now I imagine what's happened is shows like this one had to kind of live with that because it's what happened in their universe. And so they had to incorporate it in. And it sets the wrong tone at the end of this show. Yeah. And I don't know how people who didn't watch or, you know, weren't big Star Trek fans before they watched Prodigy, I don't know how they felt about this, but I definitely think it takes a weird turn here at the end. Yeah. When I said we should have ended the show after the Janeway log, I meant it. I think it should have just been done at that point. Okay, we fixed everything, boom, done. I don't know either how much of this they had to change, you know, because they weren't sure if they were going to get season 3. Right, I have no idea. But this part of it comes from Picard, not from them being forced to end it here.
I would be completely fine if you found a way of retconning that dumpster fire of season 1 and 2.
Or just jump past it. Oh yeah, that happened 20 years ago.
This is not what we're interested in with Star Trek.
Yeah, I do agree. And I think they maybe tried to save it by doing what they did with the Prodigy crew. Hey, we're going to send you out as our beacon of hope. Yeah. You go out and you still be Star Trek. Oh, but meanwhile, we've dragged Janeway out of retirement. Now she's got to do something she doesn't want to do, and all these other bad things, they're going to happen over here off screen, so you don't have to worry about it. And it's like, okay, at the same time, it felt a bit forced. Would they really give this ship to a bunch of field-promoted ensigns? I don't know. I was very believable, I thought, how they found the ship in the beginning of the show in season 1, but this is a little bit different. They didn't put an adult with them onto the ship or anything like that. They don't have a full crew. It's just a little bit strange, but I do think it's their way of saying, okay, we're just going to leave that over there, that thing that we don't want to deal with over there, and we're going to go over here and be the new positive Star Trek, what it's supposed to be.
Well, they gave the Valiant to the Starfleet youth.
And that didn't go well. That's because the grown-ups got killed, Well, okay, so we're not going to harp on that. That's not Prodigy's fault. That's Star Trek fault.
Absolutely not a flaw of Prodigy.
No. So let's talk a little bit about what stood out in these 2 episodes before we sort of wrap up and talk about the season as a whole.
Yes.
So what are the things that stood out for you?
First thing that stands out is the production quality of this episode and the look of it.
Oh, agreed, yeah.
Oh, gosh. Just great animation, just great look. The space battle scenes. Visually an absolute delight to watch. Also, we get more use of the music, which is very good. And the countdown from Gwyn as they're about to enter the wormhole. And Janeway saying, once more into the breach.
Yeah, that was good.
I just wish Kor had been on the bridge with her.
We did get some Jankum humor back, which was nice. I think I complained about that in the last couple episodes where there hasn't been enough Jankum. So I was grateful for the humor.
I thought Gwen thinking strategically and distracting Asencia with the fight. I loved the concept of that. I thought the fight sequence was great. And also, I think I liked that it showed the difference between Gwen and Asencia. At the end, Gwen could have killed her, and she didn't.
Well, she could have. It wouldn't have been right, so it wouldn't have made sense.
But I think it shows that Gwen is the more moral character.
I think, though, I'll say this is the third hand-to-hand combat with those two characters that we've had to watch, and I'm not sure I needed 3. It's a bit much. What I will say is that they kept it brief, which is good. You know, the final fist fight in the rain, like, come on.
Oh, that's what they missed. They should have had it raining. I liked it because I thought it very much served a purpose.
It did, at least the way it ended, but you didn't need all the other stuff. You could have just had the beginning of her saying, why won't you just die? And then you could have had the end. You didn't need anything else in the middle of them all falling off the platform and kicking each other. It's like, okay, I've seen that. And also they're cartoons. And you know, I hate hand-to-hand combat. I just think it is such a waste of my time to have to watch that.
I respectfully disagree.
And again, that is not Prodigy's fault. I just am tired of that. The weird defiance of Hollow Janeway was just weird and out of character, and I didn't understand it. It's not how she was in season 1. I mean, maybe it's because her influences in season 1 were the kids and her influences in season 2 were Chakotay. I don't know.
Yeah, she seems a little more irritable.
Yes, yeah. It was also weird that the hologram is the one that was in love with Chakotay, but that gave me creepy vibes. I did like that we didn't hook up Janeway and Chakotay. That made me very happy.
That is the absolute number one thing I am happy about. I was really worried about it. I think they might have done that deliberately to make us think they were going to ship them, and then they didn't. And it's like, oh, thank God.
Thank you for not doing that. Yes. I also really liked the montage at the end when they did all the time stuff, even though you and I are not convinced the time stuff makes sense. But I did like them showing all those things again to sort of remind us of all the stuff that has to stitch back together in order for the paradox to go away. Yeah. Was it just me, or is making Chakotay Captain far-fetched? Because his last commission, he got his entire crew killed. I mean, people are often promoted when they shouldn't be, but I don't know.
Well, the Admiral said they're short-staffed, so they're scraping the bottom of the barrel.
That happened before that, though.
You know, maybe it serves a purpose. Maybe the crew that they put on with Chakotay are the people they want to get rid of. Yeah, they'll be gone in a few weeks.
The one thing, you know, I'm not super thrilled about Janeway retiring, but I did like when she was standing looking at her new house, you could hear really quietly, you could hear a dog barking, and we know that Janeway loves dogs. I thought that was actually a very cute little thing that they did.
I'm fine with the retirement just because I think it's something captains do, and then they regret it.
Okay, and she might...
They get out of the chair, and then they realize everything's wrong.
Okay. The last thing I had is, even at the end, Janeway still doesn't have as many pips as that idiot Jellicoe. Come on.
Well, because Jellicoe's clearly a suck-up to the Federation Council.
Give her the pips.
Jellicoe's response to anything the Federation Council wants to do is, yes, sir, absolutely.
Oh, my gosh. We didn't mention the line where when Janeway is giving her log, she says, an old friend once said, we do not feel the passage of time, but the presence of time within us. We grow from what we leave behind as we reach for what lies ahead. I mean, it's a very deep thing that she's saying there. And apparently that comes from a scene that was cut from Nemesis.
Oh.
So it's quite it's a literal deep cut.
Yeah.
That they stuck in there. And that was, I thought that was a really good part here of how they sort of wrapped up what Janeway was trying to say, because it ties in with her feelings of wanting to move on and do something else.
Yeah. I like it. Well, I think that's a theme that happens in Star Trek across the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And she's in good company here. I've said it a dozen times in this episode alone. Kirk retired. Kirk wanted to leave, and it was wrong. Spock left Starfleet and went back to Vulcan to try and cast out all his emotions and got pulled back in. I think it's a theme that they try to leave, but they can't. There's always something pulling them back.
Right. Yeah, and you get that in except for the original series, which you have to get that from the movies.
Yeah.
But you get that from the other series in the last episode of each of them, right?
Right.
Okay, do you have anything else that stood out, or are you ready to go to rating?
No, that's everything. We can move on.
Okay, so what do you give these 2 episodes out of 10?
Okay. Episode 1, Ouroboros, absolute 10. Beautiful. Just really good Trek. Episode 2, the first 12 minutes, I will give a 10. Fantastic wrapping up the story. Thought it worked really well. It was really good. 12 minutes on, 5. Maybe even a 4.
What happened right at that moment? Is that when the Planitia thing happens?
The story pretty much wraps up at 12 minutes, I think.
I'm not kidding. When Janeway gives her little speech, we should have ended the whole thing. Yeah. The whole season should have just ended right there. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I wasn't too thrilled about all of the rest of it either. Well, I don't know. I don't know what my rating is exactly. I didn't feel great about these 2 episodes when we were done after we watched them the first time. I felt better about them when I went and rewatched them and did the notes and paid a little bit, maybe more attention to some of the details. But
that's fair, yeah.
I still think the timeline thing is a problem because I just think the timeline doesn't make sense. I think Asencia saying the thing about the Civil War is inevitable, it always happens. They may have put that in there to help say, no, it doesn't make any difference. That part doesn't make any difference. It's still going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But in the moment when we watched it, it was like, you changed the diviner. How can you assume all these things are going to go back to being exactly what they were? Did you tell him he needed to do all these things, to make sure that Gwen is born? I don't know. It was like it was too easy.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel great about it. I didn't feel like we tied it up in a way that I found personally satisfying.
Yeah.
And even many times during the season, I asked the question, I don't know how we're going to get there. And then, so was it for me just a self-fulfilling prophecy where I was never going to be satisfied with whatever they did? But that really impacted the way that I felt about these episodes when they ended. Yeah. And of course, I'm also not sure, did they have to make a bunch of changes at the end because they just weren't sure they were going to get a season 3? They're still not sure. Maybe somebody knows. We don't know.
The algorithm knows.
But certainly there was a time when they didn't know. And so did they have to tape a bunch of extra things on at the end to kind of wrap it up and clean it up? And ultimately, while that's good because we're like, great, the characters are all happy over here, but it's also bad because it's a little bit of an unsatisfying, everything's, fine. We've wrapped up in a bow and put a ribbon on it. So I don't think these are my favorite episodes of the season. I don't think they're terrible. I think we've watched this whole season and said there hasn't been a bad episode, and I don't think these are bad. I think there are parts of these 2 episodes that I really didn't like. So I would probably give the first episode, I agree, is stronger. More happens.
Right.
But the whole big wrap-up thing with the timeline also happens in that episode. So I'm going to give it a 7.5, and then I'll probably give the last episode, a 7.
Interesting.
Just not my favorite episodes of the season.
Yeah.
But it's tough because there is some really good stuff in there.
Right.
But I didn't feel like we nailed it. Let's get some feedback from Jeff X-Force 11.
Well, hello, Star Trek fans. This is Jeff X-Force 11 leaving my feedback for Ouroboros Part 1 and 2. And I just gotta say, I'm not crying, you're crying. Oh my goodness, what a wonderful close to season 2. Yes, they really hedged their bets and they left us with a happy ending and a good close in case we don't get more series, but yet we get Wesley's prophecy that they will continue. And so I really, really hope that we get more seasons. I absolutely love the new uniforms there at the end, and I like the way that they're doing this. I love how they're bringing this up to the Picard timeline and the start of things there with the Romulans and everything else, and looping in so much of what happened in the Picard series. And I am just so appreciative of how they're doing things. It was a good close of closing the time loop and everything else. I thought it was a smart way of doing that. And I really appreciate the journey that we've gone on with this crew. Again, I really hope for more seasons, but this left me satisfied. And, they can do books, they can do more series. I want more from them, but this was a wonderful end if they do have to end actual series here. I think that we have been emotionally invested. I'm grateful for Netflix for picking up this series because Paramount Plus didn't want to continue, which was the silly mistake. But I love this, and I love that we get the ship being named the Prodigy. So I enjoyed it. I'm thankful for you two and all the listeners going on this journey, and hopefully we'll have more seasons to talk about it. All right, those are my thoughts. X-Force is out.
I will definitely agree with Jeff there. The new look uniforms, definitely very good.
Yeah.
And Wesley's little nod towards, oh no, you haven't done the great things that you're going to do yet. Very nice. This is why we need a third season, or maybe a fourth, because I want to find out what happens.
Yeah, me too. I do like the thought of we could write books from here or comics, actually.
Yeah.
I think this crew would be quite fitting in some graphic novels.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And let's hear what our kid correspondent Mahi has to say.
Mahi's personal log, stardate 120415.24. Finally, we are going to put the Protostar back on Tars Lamora? Yes, we will. But will it go as planned? No. When has anything gone as planned? Especially when Mr. Crusher is the one with the confusing, chaotic, no one knows what he is thinking about plan. Finding the needle in the haystack, which is lost in outer space, only using a telescope, as Zero said, was the next step. Well, with their amazing rock along with Majel, Wesley Crusher, and Zero, we were sure to find the needle, aka the route to send the Protostar back in time. But Asencia will not stop, and we know that. The fight between Gwen and Asencia showed how where there is a will, there is a way for goodness to prevail. Or badness, if their will is stronger. And with the support of your loved ones, we are bound to get stronger. Murph was surely being super dramatic, just like our doctor, faking the long fall and coming back up with Dreadnought's mask. He did trick me and Jankum for sure. Murph is an amazing security officer, for sure. Wish we knew more about him and understood him better. Dal is surely getting better at saving others, just like Jankum is getting better at understanding the need of the team and speaking for them. Dal saved the day by connecting the loose power coupling to create the required wormhole. And Murph saved our hero. Are we now ready to send the Protostar? No. Don't you know already? The Loom are here as Mr. Wesley Crusher goes out into his freaking out mode. But we do need to give him credit for sticking to the original plan, even though you have to fly through loom-infested wormhole. Gwen and Admiral Janeway are so similar in their leadership. They believe in the mission to save their team, even if they have to sacrifice themselves. They trust in the strength of the team and don't hesitate for taking risks. With Hologram Janeway's brilliant idea to transport back once the Protostar is on its way, we are now all set. It was fun to see the last 2 seasons go past us as the timelines merged and the team was ready. The best part was having a copy of Hologram Janeway that saved all of her experiences and memories for the future. Now, when the team would get back together, it would be a continuation of their time together and not a restart. Finally, it's done. The team finished their mission to fix the timeline and are living their dream as Starfleet cadets, loving their newfound experience as students and learning temporal mechanics 201. Vice Admiral Janeway finally gets to retire. Or does she? Well, guess not. Trouble never ends. The crew, for sure, is extremely lucky to have someone like Admiral Janeway to look out for them. Having all science exploration ship promotion to being ensigns and Captain Hologram Janeway as the emergency command hologram to guide them was the perfect opportunity for them to continue to explore and learn. I was surprised, but not as surprised, when Dal chose to be Captain Gwen's number one, as the number one needs to be loyal, capable, and keep their captain honest. I am glad he now knows that he is only learning as he grows into a good leader. This season surely repeated the message that good always wins over evil. Mr. Wesley Crusher is kinda crazy, the Doctor is super smart, dramatic, and rather annoying, while Admiral Janeway and Captain Gwen are good leaders who lead by example, while Dal is trying really hard to learn. This season confirmed that Gwen is still my favorite character. She is a calm, caring, compassionate leader who is willing to sacrifice herself for the team. Looking forward to the next season and Mahi's personal log.
Thank you for the very in-depth feedback, Mahi. I think we should discuss this, Kim.
Yeah, that was a long one.
Well, I'm glad Mahi understood the timeline part. I mean, that's more than we did the first time we watched it.
Well, she's a lot smarter than we are. I like her comment about when does anything go to plan? Never.
Well, she pretty much has the series figured there.
Yeah, for sure.
I do like how she was impressed with Murph and how
Yeah.
Isn't this the second time somebody has defeated the Dreadnought or a Dreadnought and then pulled the head off? They did that with a cat, didn't they?
Oh, yeah, I think they did. Yeah, she would like to understand Murph better. I can't really believe that they would put someone into Starfleet who couldn't communicate.
He can, just they don't understand his language.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm suspicious of that. I don't see how that would work. I mean, it's good that he understands them, but how would that work?
Well, maybe they're figuring because he's a potentially dangerous creature, best to have him on your side than outside.
Yeah.
I also note she seems very impressed with Janeway and the hologram version.
Well, she was happy they saved her.
Yes.
Who
isn't?
Which we talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That is good.
I wish they'd saved the one at the end of season 1. That would have actually been more useful, in my opinion.
The one who was actually heroic, rather
Yes.
than this one who has a weird thing for Chakotay.
And is quite flippant.
Yeah, exactly.
I also like her comparison between Gwyn and Janeway, of contrasting those two characters and how there are similar themes running between the two of them.
Yeah, and I'm really happy that she has such a positive vision of leadership, and she has two good examples here in, women characters. And I think that's really good for her and for her whole generation to be able to see that women can be good leaders.
Yeah, I think Gwyn making captain seemed to be a very big hit with her.
Yeah, and Gwen has always been her favorite character.
Yeah. She also seems, and I don't know if this is the right word, a little dismayed with Wesley's chaos.
Yeah.
For how chaotic he is for someone who's so powerful.
And I think that was our favorite thing about him.
Yeah.
I could see that from her perspective, the chaos isn't good.
Yeah.
But from our perspective, that was a really good addition to the character.
Right.
And it made a lot of sense, I think, that is someone who is sort of outside of time and has to keep all these different things together, your brain would be chaos. And, there would be many times where you'd be like, oh, I didn't tell you that? Oh, I'm sure I told you that.
Oh, yeah, like we missed out the details. Yeah, it's for people who have a history with the character, what they turned the character into, I think, is genius.
Agreed. I also really liked how she said the Doctor was rather annoying.
Well,
yes, he can be.
Well, it's kind of funny because we just recorded Deadlock, and that has some very strange interactions with the Doctor in the way he behaves. Mm-hmm. And you bring that up in the podcast, so...
Where he calls the baby our baby, Ensign Wildman's baby. Right. It's like, dude, that is not your baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a little quirky. And there's a lot of early eye rolling with the Doctor, from Janeway, because he could be quite annoying.
Yes.
So I do appreciate her saying that. I think Captain Janeway can relate.
That's another good character they brought back into the story, and I think remained consistent with what he was at the end of Voyager.
Right. Her mom told me that she's really enjoyed being a part of this and watching the show, and I'm so happy that she has enjoyed it. We weren't sure when we started because she was quite young, and we weren't sure if she would like the show and if she would be interested in this process. But I'm glad that she enjoyed it. I'm sure she also would like to see another season of it.
She finishes on the same page as both of us. We'd like season 3, please.
Yeah.
It's great that Star Trek seems to have found a way to appeal to a younger, the next generation of audience.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's critically important. Otherwise, it fades out into obscurity.
Yeah, I totally agree. We have to not only work on getting a new audience, but we have to work on shifting and changing and growing. We can't keep everything exactly the same forever.
Yeah.
It won't last. So, yeah,
Right.
I'm glad that it has worked for her. And I'd really like to say a big thank you to both Mahi and her mother for participating in this podcast. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for doing that.
So let's wrap up
Yes.
this podcast with a look at season 2 overall, because we're not going to do a separate episode to wrap it up. So I just made a couple of categories of things I was disappointed with and things that I was delighted with in season 2. So what do you have? Which category first do you want to start in? And then what do you have?
Okay, I will start with, if you take the view, the future is inevitable.
Yeah.
Solum will fall into civil war. The diviner will become the diviner. The young Asencia will become the old Asencia. This happens. This repeats. It's inevitable. Then it does work.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to end up in this terrible place regardless of anything that they do. So the timeline is saved. That's not spelled out. And I think that's
the flaw.
Might be the flaw.
Mm-hmm.
You could literally rescue that with one line, with Wesley talking to Janeway and saying, the truth is Solum is always destroyed. There's no way for it to be saved. There's always going to be that war, and the diviner is always going to make that decision.
He doesn't need to spell it out quite in that detail, because Asencia does say that thing about, in all the multiverse, this is what happens, right? But he could say something like, just enough to clean it up, and just say,
yes.
Yeah, the Civil War's still going to happen. You don't have to give all of it, but just one little sentence to,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Because those of us who are watching carefully, we know we have impacted that guy, Iltherin, and he is different.
Yeah.
Just address that.
Yep.
Just say he still goes mad. I don't know. Do something.
Yeah, you could wrap that up with Wesley telling Janeway. It still all happens. Yeah. Because look at the other races, the other places that the Protostar affected in season 1 when they were visiting the Enterprisians, all this other stuff.
Right.
They had a huge effect, as well as the effect that the Diviner had in the Delta Quadrant. So I feel it's a little bit headcanon-y, especially there is one line. You pointed out the one line that she makes the comment about what happens to Solum.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's because you don't want to make the series too depressing, saying all these great things that happen to Solum. The Diviner's not actually a bad guy. He becomes a monster, as does Asencia. They are doomed to repeat their mistakes.
Yeah, I could have very easily said, after 50 years of Civil War, these two are going to revert to type. That would have been a single sentence, would have explained it.
Yep. You always complain, I always look on the positive side. If I've got a positive interpretation of Trek or a negative one, I'm going to go to the overly positive.
I don't complain. I admire your ability to do that.
So I'm going to go with the you can headcanon your way out of it without too much headcanon. I mean, I don't know, maybe they didn't want to make it really tragic, and which it would be if these two end up becoming the monsters that they become.
I mean, that was my main thing in my disappointed section as well. Really, the one other thing I had was that I thought young Asencia would be more involved in the resolution of the story than she was. I think we could have used her a little bit more. I'm glad we did use her, but would have liked to see, sort of like how they did the thing with the Cation at the end of season 1. They made her, the Cation, a little bit more important.
Oh, right.
And so we could have done that with Asencia. Just like the end of Discovery, some of the stuff that happened at the very end felt a little tacked on because of a rushed cancellation. So I don't want to hold any of that against it.
No.
I think that was really it for me in terms of disappointing. Did you have anything else?
No, that was the only thing. I think overall as a show, it worked very well.
Yeah.
I can't point at stuff and go, oh gosh, that was clunky. That was really bad.
No.
It's a really solidly put together show.
Yeah, and even the things in this last episode that I didn't like, it doesn't undo how much I love this show. It just doesn't. I mean, just like there's crap episodes of TNG. That doesn't make any difference to me. TNG is still my favorite show of all. It just doesn't matter when there are little things that they don't do perfectly, because you can't do anything perfectly. That's totally fine.
The one thing I would add is I wish they'd put the backup on the Protostar. So the original Hollow Janeway from season 1, you could have had a reveal. There's a backup of Janeway.
Because we loved that character. Yeah. Well, if we move over to what delighted us about season 2, the first thing on my list is Wesley Crusher. Such a joy.
100%. The fact that you made Wesley Crusher a character I care about, I did not believe you could do that.
Yeah, used really well. I think maybe it was more of a surprise to you. I had it spoiled to me after a couple of episodes, but still hidden really well, and I just really like the sort of quirkiness of him, just really fitting.
Yeah, and I loved the tie back to Assignment Earth and the safe the door. As soon as you saw that door, and I'm like, no, they are not. And then when it's Wesley, just outstanding people.
Well, I mean, spoiler alert, those are my 2 favorite episodes of all of season 2. Yeah.
And finally, Voyager and the Mirror Universe Janeway kick ass.
I don't know. That was pretty entertaining, and it was certainly fun to see that at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
It was a little gimmicky, but it was fun. I will give you that.
I will live with the gimmick.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. The Mirror episodes are always a little gimmicky.
It's totally true, yeah. The second thing on my what delighted me list is absolutely everything that came out of Jankum Pog's mouth. I love that character so much.
Oh, don't be so dramatic. I mean, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Oh my God.
Yep.
Absolute delight.
And of course, here comes the light show.
What's on your list?
I mentioned it a million times. Beautiful animation quality, the visual style and the coloring is it's just gorgeous. It's a delight to watch. I mean, so many of these scenes are like, yeah, that could just be a framed poster. It's beautiful.
Yeah, totally agree. That was consistent from season 1.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the journey of Zero in season 2.
Yeah.
I mean, we started it right from the beginning with them wondering what it would be like to have physical touch.
Yeah.
And then they gained it, and then they worried about losing it. And also, Zero had that whole arc where they had to save everybody. And that was the episode I cried the most. And again, I think that was because I was on an airplane, but also...
It was a great episode as well.
It was a great episode, and the performance of the actor in those scenes was just really good. And it was such a Star Trek thing. It was such a Wrath of Khan, the needs of the many thing. I really enjoyed that.
And the bond to the family, the found family.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I do like Dal's arc through this season. You saw Dal also being the classic season 1 Dal at times, and he jumps first and then looks where he's going.
Yeah.
And then the resolution of Dal finally getting a little bit of maturity, a little bit of experience, and at the end going, Gwyn is the one who's better at this. I can learn from this. I can be a solid number 1. And also when he says he's still on the command track, but there's other things he can do. It's sort of almost a recognition of there's a wider world out there. So Dal's development path was really kind of fun to watch, and seeing him becoming this more pragmatic leader, still brave and still a little reckless, I would expect, but a little bit more circumspect. So a learning curve for Dal.
Yeah, I mean, we can really see his journey in the beginning from not trusting anyone, only believing in himself, to where he is at the end of season 2, or really kind of middle of season 2, where he starts to say things like, oh, maybe we really do need Starfleet to help with this. Maybe there are some other experts.
Yep.
And there's a real turning point where he starts following Gwen's lead. Now, it doesn't always go perfectly with, what Gwen wants to do, but nothing ever does. And yet he still believed in her and he still followed her. So yeah, that was quite a journey.
I like that they write Gwyn as an imperfect leader.
Oh, yeah, me too.
It's one of the best things about Star Trek captains. Don't make them perfect, make them flawed.
You know, we pick on Chakotay a lot because I can't stand Chakotay in Voyager, and I think I've convinced you that he's a bad leader and he's not a great character.
I will give my background. When I watched Chakotay, I always thought he was kind of a meh character. A seat filler, almost. He wasn't terribly well written, and he wasn't terribly likable for most of, certainly the first 2 seasons. Watching them in sequence, as we are now, watching them regularly, and watching each one, and actually doing an analysis and looking at the episodes, it really comes across that he's not very well written, and he's not written to be a likable character. It really doesn't sort of work.
Yeah.
And he doesn't seem very skilled.
Yeah, they've made him more likable here, but regardless of certainly my own personal distaste for Chakotay, one thing that really delighted me this season, in the second episode, or maybe it was in the first, I can't remember anymore, but of the last flight of the Protostar, where the crew had to really turn him around and remind him what Starfleet is.
Yeah.
And I actually really like that, because here are these kids who didn't even know what Starfleet was at the beginning of last season, and they are so all in.
Yeah.
They are so bought in, right? And they should be. And they had to turn him around, and I actually really enjoyed that.
That was a good episode.
Yeah.
But this is also a guy who'd been in the Marquee, so he'd already abandoned Starfleet once.
Right.
Although, it was kind of understandable. Starfleet did sell them out.
The last thing on my delighted list was I'm just happy Chakotay and Janeway didn't get together at the end, because that would have really irritated me, because I do not like that guy.
Oh, too funny.
But anyway, all right, that's all I have for disappointed and delighted. What about you?
Oh, well, the other thing I'll add is I liked bringing in the character of Majel, a Vulcan. That was a really nice touch. I mean,
Yeah, I loved her.
That's a Starfleet staple. You got to have a Vulcan somewhere on your team.
Yeah, and we said that Zero had been sort of playing that role of Vulcan, but that wouldn't have necessarily worked with their arc this season. So, yeah, bringing in the Vulcan logic was good. And also, Majel is just a great character.
Yeah.
And she had a similar arc to what we were just talking about, which is that her version of what she thought Starfleet was not what she thought it was at the end of the show, because, again, of getting involved with this crew and being part of that family.
Yeah, and you say that, and it's the acceptance of her into that family almost immediately, I think, is another thing that stands out. You contrast that with her little Starfleet youth team. They were aloof, they were separate, they were, you're lesser, and wanted to keep people away or keep them out. Whereas this lot are much more the embracing, she's now helping us, welcome on board.
Yeah. And
it's such a contrast.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I think we can wrap up season 2 by maybe talking about what we felt were the best episodes of the season.
Yes.
And for me, the absolute best episodes were The Devourer of All Things, parts 1 and 2, where we met Wesley Crusher and the Loom.
Yep.
Those were just so good. There was so much action. There was so much drama.
Oh, yeah.
We got Action Janeway mixed in there. All kinds of really good stuff, I thought, happened in those episodes.
I have to agree. Those are my 2 favorites.
And then I think Ascension parts 1 and 2 is probably next. Those were also good as we led into the finale. And then you have to throw Cracked Mirror in there, right? To me, those are the best episodes. I think there's some excellent stuff in the 2 last episodes, but I would not put them as my top favorite.
Mine is slightly different. I would put Cracked Mirror probably my 3rd spot, and then Asencia Rising.
But I think in general, hopefully we've made it obvious we love this show. We want there to be a season 3.
Love a season 3.
We will certainly pick on things about everything that we watch, because that's why you do a podcast. But it's a great show.
Yeah.
No, it's an absolutely excellent show, and I hope it comes back.
Good job, everybody involved.
Well, normally at this point, we would do some speculation about what's to come. Should we do that, since we're not even sure if there is a season 3?
Well, I'll tell you what I'd like to see in season 3.
Sure.
Now that they're a Starfleet vessel, you could very much do a classic TOS style, investigating planets, strange anomalies, seeking out strange new worlds. Oh, wait a minute. Isn't there a series like that?
Yeah, that actually would be fun, right? If we just turned it into a Star Trek show like that, and we didn't have so much drama about the entire universe imploding.
I think, you could turn to more of a traditional episodic series.
Yeah.
It would be an animated series. It would be maybe aiming at a different audience. I think that would work.
Yeah, I would watch that. I actually think what would be fun to do is if the crew accidentally threw themselves, like Voyager does, threw themselves so far from home they couldn't get back. Like maybe the Protostar gets damaged or something, but they can't get back. I actually think that would be fun. And now we're introducing all new aliens and all new stories. And we've still got our tie to Janeway because we've got Hollow Janeway.
And then it truly is Voyager, the next generation.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Oh, yeah, like I'm going to complain about that. That would be good. And you would be able to run almost a completely separate from Starfleet show.
Now you don't care about that other stuff that's going on with the Romulans. Yeah, because you're in a whole new location. Mm-hmm. That would be interesting.
Maybe the far end of the Gamma Quadrant.
All right, well, I think that wraps up our Star Trek Prodigy podcast.
I think so. I can't think of anything else to say.
We'll come back if the show comes back.
Oh, yeah, we will be there.
In the meantime, if you would like to continue the discussion with us about Star Trek Prodigy, or if you want to continue with us on our ReBingeIt journey and listen to the Star Trek Voyager ReBinge that we're doing, please do that. But you can continue the conversations with us by emailing us at RebingeIt@gmail.com, or you can also find us on YouTube, Threads, and Instagram, or you can join the conversation at facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts.
We're also going to start posting on Blue Sky as well, seeing as all the cool kids seem to be going there now.
Yes, we are there. I haven't posted there yet, but I probably will.
Well, thanks for joining ReBingeIt on the Star Trek Prodigy Season 2 podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me, for now.
And listen to Janeway.
And don't be a Borg.